So recently, a routine police patrol parked outside a bar in Fort Worth, Texas. After last call, the officer noticed a man leaving the bar so intoxicated that he could barely walk. The man stumbled around the parking lot for a few minutes, with the officer quietly observing. After what seemed an eternity in which he tried his keys on 5 different vehicles, the man managed to find his truck and trailer and fall into it. He sat there for a few minutes as a number of other patrons left the bar and drove off. Finally, he got into the car and started the engine, switched the wipers on and off. It was a fine, dry summer night, flicked the blinkers on and off a couple of times, honked the horn, and then switched on the lights. He moved the vehicle forward a few inches, reversed a little, and then remained still for a few more minutes as some more of the other patrons' vehicles left. Finally, when his was the only car left in the parking lot, he pulled out and drove slowly down the road. The police officer, having waited patiently all this time, now started up his patrol car, put on the flashing lights, promptly pulled the man over, and administered a breathalyzer test. To his amazement, the breathalyzer indicated no evidence that the man had consumed any alcohol at all. Dumbfounded, the officer said, "I'll have to ask you to accompany me to the police station." "This breathalyzer equipment must be broken. I seriously doubt it," said the truly proud hillbilly. "Tonight I'm the designated decoy." So a man was walking through a rather seedy section of town when a bum walked up to him and asked the man for $2. The man asked, "Will you buy booze?" The bum replied, "No." Then the man asked, "Will you gamble it away?" The bum said no. Then the man asked the bum, "Will you come home with me so my wife can see what happens to a man who doesn't drink or gamble?" So a gentleman had too much alcohol at a party, was heading home, and was pulled over by a state trooper. Upon being tested, the fellow couldn't walk a straight line any more than he could drive one. So the trooper wrote out a ticket and had just given it to the driver before an accident in the opposite lane took his attention to more important matters. The inebriated driver, figuring that the trooper wasn't coming back to him, drove home and went to bed. He was awakened in the morning by a knock at the door, created by 2 more state troopers. "Are you Mr. Johnson?" they asked. He admitted that he was. "Were you pulled over at Main Street last night for driving under the influence?" Again, the man admitted that he was. "And what did you do then?" the troopers asked. The man replied that he drove his car home and went to bed. "Where is your car now?" the troopers inquired. The man answered that it was in the garage. "May we see the car?" asked the troopers. He man answered sure and opened the garage. Inside the garage was the state trooper's car. So a wife was in bed with her lover when she heard her husband's key in the door. "Stay where you are," she said. "He's so drunk he won't even notice you're in bed with me." Sure enough, the husband lurched into bed none the wiser, but a few minutes later, through a drunken haze, he saw 6 feet sticking out at the end of the bed. He turned to his wife. "Hey, there are 6 feet in this bed. There should only be 4. What's going on?" "Nonsense," said the wife. "You're so drunk you miscounted. Get out of bed and try again. You can see better from over there." The husband climbed out of bed and counted. 1, 2, 3, 4. "You're right, you know." So the drunken wino was stumbling down the street with 1 foot on the curb and 1 foot in the gutter. A cop pulled up and said, "I've got to take you in, sir. You're obviously drunk." The wasted wino asked, "Oh, Cipher, are you absolutely sure I'm drunk?" "Yeah, buddy, I'm sure," said the copper. "Let's go." Obviously relieved, the wino said, "That's a relief. I thought I was a cripple." So a father was trying to teach his young son the evils of alcohol. He put 1 worm in a glass of water and another worm in a glass of whiskey. The worm in the water lived, while the one in whiskey curled up and died. "All right, son," asked the father. "What does that show you?" "Well, Dad, it shows that if you drink alcohol, you will not have worms." So there was this guy at a bar, just looking at his drink. He stays like that for half of an hour. Then, this big trouble-making truck driver steps next to him, takes the drink from the guy, and just drinks it all down. The poor man starts crying. The truck driver says, "Come on, man, I was just joking. Here, I'll buy you another drink. I just can't stand to see a man cry." "No, it's not that. This day is the worst of my life. First, I fall asleep and I go late to my office. My boss, outrageous, fires me. When I leave the building to my car, I found out it was stolen. The police said that they can do nothing. I get a cab to return home, and when I leave it, I remember I left my wallet and credit cards there. The cab driver just drives away. I go home, and when I get there, I find my wife in bed with the gardener. I leave home and come to this bar. And just when I was thinking about putting an end to my life, you show up and drink my poison. So, the bartender asks the guy sitting at the bar, "What can I get for you?" The guy answers, "A scotch, please." The bartender hands him the drink and says, "That'll be $5. To which the guy replies, "What are you talking about? I don't owe you anything for this." A lawyer, sitting nearby and overhearing the conversation, then says to the bartender, "You know, he's got you there." In the original offer, which constitutes a binding contract upon acceptance, there was no stipulation of remuneration. The barkeep was not impressed, but says to the guy, "Okay, you beat me for a drink, but don't ever let me catch you in here again." The next day, same guy walks into the bar. Bartender says, "What the heck are you doing in here? I can't believe you've got the audacity to come back." The guy says, "What are you talking about? I've never been in this place in my life." The bartender replies, "I'm very sorry, but this is uncanny. You must have a double." To which the guy replies, "Thank you. Make it a scotch." So a man walks into a bar and orders a shot of whiskey, then looks into his pocket. He does this over and over again. Finally, the bartender asks why he orders a shot of whiskey and afterwards look into his pocket. The man responded, "I have a picture of my wife in there, and when she starts to look good, then I'll go home." So a beautiful young woman walks into a bar completely naked. She stands in front of the bartender and says, "Serve me a cold beer." The bartender serves her the beer and stares at her, not moving. "What wrong?" She says, "Have you ever seen a naked woman?" "Yes, many times," the bartender replies. "Then what are you looking at?" the woman asks. The bartender replies, "I want to see where you're going to get the money to pay for beer." So a son says to his dad, "Hey, Dad, what is an alcoholic?" The dad puts his arm around his son and says, "Well, son, you see those 4 trees over there? An alcoholic would see 8 trees." And the son says, "But Dad, there are only 2 trees there." So a guy stumbles through the front door of a bar, ambles up to the bartender and orders a beer. The bartender looks at the drunk man and says, "I'm sorry, sir, but I can't serve you. You've already had too much to drink." The guy swears and walks out of the bar. 5 minutes later, the guy comes flying through the side door of the bar and yells for a beer. Again, the bartender says, "I'm sorry, sir, but I can't serve you. You've already had too much to drink." 10 minutes later, the same guy comes barrel-assing through the back door of the bar, storms up to the bartender, and demands a beer. Again, the bartender says to the man, "I'm really sorry, sir, but you've had too much to drink. You're going to have to leave." The guy looks quizzically at the bartender and says finally, "My God, man, how many bars do you work at?" So 2 guys were fishing from a boat in a pond. One of them saw a floating bottle and picked it up. When he pulled out the cork, a genie emerged from the bottle. "Oh, thank you, said the genie. "I've been trapped in that bottle for years. I'm going to grant you 1 wish as a reward for releasing me." One of the men said, "Can you change all the water in this pond to beer?" "You've got it," said the genie as he vanished. Both of the men dipped their cups into the pond for a taste. Sure enough, it was an excellent Belgian-style lager. The second man said, "Way to go, big guy. You realize that from now on we have to pee into the boat?" So a woman answers a knock at her door to find 2 men standing there who work with her husband at the local brewery. "I'm sorry to have to tell you, Mrs. Sullivan," says one man, "that your husband passed away at work today, drowned in a vat of beer." "Oh, my dear Michael," she wails, "he didn't stand a chance." "Well," says the other fellow, "that's not exactly the case. You see, he got out 3 times to have a piss." So a drunk old man sitting in a bar watches a well-dressed young fellow walk in and ask the bartender for an 18-year-old scotch. The bartender pours him a drink, but as soon as he tastes it, the customer says, "No, no, no, sir. This is a 12-year-old. I asked for an 18." Mumbling an apology, the bartender hustles off and returns with another glass. Taking a sip, the customer says, "Well, that's better, but it's a 14, and I really want the 18. Without a word, the bartender retreats, returning forthwith carrying another drink. When the customer tastes it, he smiles warmly and says, "Yeah, that's the stuff." The old drunk, having watched the entire scene, shakes his head in wonder and walks out of the bar, only to return a minute later carrying a bottle in a brown paper sack. Handing it to the scotch lover, he slurs, "Here you go, fella. Try this." Tilting the bottle to his lips, the gentleman immediately spits out the sip, exclaiming, "Oh my God, man, that tastes like piss." "Very good," the drunk replies. "Now tell me how old I am." So an Asian guy steps up to a bar alongside of a big fella and starts drinking. The big guy says, "Hey, you know any of them martial arts like kung fu or karate?" The Asian guy replies, "Wow, that's pretty racist. You think just because I'm Asian I must practice martial arts?" "No," says the big dude. "I asked because you're drinking my damn beer." So a man is hitchhiking on a lonely road. After a good while, an old beat-up truck stops and picks him up. And after a couple of minutes of small talk, the driver asks the man if he wants some booze. "Sure," he says, and gets handed a bottle. When he tries to drink it, the smell of bad moonshine overwhelms him, and he declines the drink. The old man driving just steps on the brakes and pulls a shotgun and screams, "Now you drink, or I'll blow your head off." The guy does what he's told and takes a steady sip. After that, the old man says, "Good, now you aim at me so I can have a drink too." So 4 CEOs of beer companies are having a meeting and they decide to get a drink. The CEO of Budweiser orders a Bud Light. The CEO of Miller orders a Miller Light. The CEO of Coors orders a Coors Light. The CEO of Guinness orders a Coke. The 3 CEOs then ask him, "Why aren't you ordering a Guinness?" He replies, "If you guys aren't drinking beer, then neither will I." So a guy walks into a bar and orders 5 whiskeys, and when they are put down in front of him, he sculls one after the other until all 5 are downed. The barman says, "Whoa, mate, steady on, you're drinking way too fast." The guy looks at him and says, "You'd drink like this too if you had what I have." The barman looks at him and says, "Why, what do you have?" And the guy says, 75 cents. So a man walks in an Alaskan bar and shouts, "Free beers outside!" So everyone in the bar, except the bartender, ran outside in excitement. The bartender, visibly angry, yells at the man, "What did you do that for? Now I have no customers." The man says, "Sorry, mister, I honestly didn't think any of those men would be brave enough to fight a grizzly bear, let alone free of them." So in the early part of the 20th century, the United States government took vigorous action to curtail the illegal distillation of ethanol. The revenuers, as they were known, were federal agents assigned to bust illegal stills and arrest their operators for tax evasion. There were 2 stated problems. First, a legitimate concern about protecting the public from poisonous, poorly made moonshine. Second, the loss of revenue caused by unpaid federal taxes on distilled spirits. Many operators of these illegal stills believed they were well within their rights as American citizens. To them, a bad law did not deserve obedience, an attitude that governments have always struggled to overcome. This story involves a young, ambitious revenuer eager to make his mark by shutting down a major operation. What he had not considered was that some of the more remote, professional stills were well defended. He arrived in a small Appalachian town wearing starched khakis and a shiny badge and began questioning the townsmen. Unsurprisingly, he received no useful information, only strong hints that it would be best for him to leave town. Eventually, he caught the attention of a teenage boy and managed to strike up a conversation. "Do you know of any stills on the mountainside?" the revenuer asked. "I sure do," replied the boy. "I'll give you $1 if you tell me where they are," said the revenuer. "Sure. I'll even give you a map." "Where's the money?" asked the boy. "Here's 50 cents, said the revenuer. "I'll give you the rest when I get back, assuming you've been honest with me." "But you ain't coming back," the boy shouted. So an elderly man is stopped by the police around 2 a.m. and is asked where he is going at this time of night. The man replies, "I am on my way to a lecture about alcohol abuse and the effects it has on the human body, as well as smoking and staying out late." The officer then asks, "Really? Who is giving that lecture at this time of night?" The man replies, "That would be my wife." So a blind man walks into a bar, takes a seat, orders a beer, and then says, "Hey, anyone want to hear a blonde joke?" The bartender strolls over and in a quiet tone says, "Listen, fella, before you continue, you may want to know, this is a lesbian biker bar. I'm blonde, the bouncer is blonde, and those two big gals shooting pool are both blonde. Are you sure you want to tell that joke?" The guy considers a moment, then shakes his head. "No," he says. "No, not if I'm going to have to explain it 4 times. So a man walks into a bar, then goes to the bathroom. He comes out, goes to the bartender. He says, "You've got a great place, but my buddy was here last night, and he said you have golden urinals. Where are they?" The bartender turns to the band and yells, "Frank, I've got a lead on the guy who pissed in your saxophone." So 2 Aussie tourists are doing a bit of hiking through the Scottish Highlands when, through the mist, they spot a pub. They can't believe their luck and continue on and walk in. 2 pints of your finest ale. Barman says 1 Aussie, and they are both shocked when the pints are poured, and the barman says, "That'll be 2 pennies. Thanks." The Aussies both look at each other and ask why so cheap. The barman says, "It's our 800th birthday today, here at the Hilltop Pub, so we are charging the same for a pint we did 800 years ago." The Aussies forego any thought of more hiking and settle in for the long haul and order 2 more pints, 2 pennies. Whilst they are drinking, they can't help but notice a bunch of guys at the other end of the bar not drinking. Next time the barman comes to take their order, they point out the other guys and how strange it is that they aren't drinking. And the barman says, "Oh, them. Don't worry about them. They're just locals. They're waiting for happy hour." So a genie appears to an Irishman and says, "You have 3 wishes. What would you like for your first wish?" The Irishman says, "I want a bottle of Guinness that never runs empty." In a flash, he's holding a cold, full bottle of Guinness. He takes a few long gulps, and within seconds, the bottle is full again. Impressed, the genie asks, "And what would you like for your other 2 wishes?" The Irishman grins and says, "I'll take 2 more of these bottles, please."